All right, Emma, I am taking a look now at your report. This is the way I evaluate them with a video just because it's a little easier for me to do. And a lot my students often say they like it this way because it's kind of like looking over my shoulder as I evaluate it. So feel free to let me know what you think about it. I welcome feedback on these videos. So let's get right into it. Your page numbering up here where it belongs. Your heading looks great. Title looks great. So everything is good so far, formatting wise, at least for sure. All right, majority scenario massage or alter. Yeah, definitely everybody's impacted by that in some way. This looks like it might be excess space in here, so make sure everything is just single spaced between parts. Make sure you don't have this kind of excess spacing. I know it's trivial, it's a small thing, but I like to point out every little thing just because, the more I can do, the more I can help you become a better writer, the better. The better I feel about it, right? So bear with me when I do that, point out little stuff. All right. Okay, so good job introducing this source and incorporating it. Don't forget though that you always want to have a page or paragraph number here, and along with the whatever's in parenthetical. So what you have in here is good. Dolly, or Dally, however it's pronounced, Dolly, had all period, and then you should have space, and then just a page number, which would be like 12 or 20 or whatever page number it is. Now, if you don't have page numbering and you need to put a paragraph number in there, then you would put a comma after the at all period. You'd put a comma there, and then you would put PAR with a little p, PAR period, and then a space, and then the paragraph number, 2, 3, whatever it is. So that's how you do that. You just want to make sure you do that for all of your entries. Okay. Okay. Your introduction is a tad long. It could be a little shorter, but it's not bad. It's good. Report intends to investigate the misinformation. Okay, good. All right, literature review. Very nice. Good job letting your audience know what you're going to specifically mean when you use the word misinformation. Now, by the way, if you remember when we talked weeks ago about whether or not you're using BEAM, remember BEAM? The B stood for background, and the E stood for examples, and the A stood for argument, and the M stood for um, methods, and was talking about basically the methods that you can use to come up with it, or to write your paper. And this would be an example of using a source as that M, right? Methods doesn't sound right. It might have started with, I can't remember what word it actually stood for, but this is actually, it was like a method of thinking, or a way of a method of doing your work. And so, whatever that M stood for, whatever the word is, this is it. You've actually got a good example here of methods, whatever that M stood for. So good job with that. Again, just make sure you add in that page or paragraph number here. Um, Subjournal. Now it would be a good idea to introduce the author. When you have an author, it's best to introduce the author and talk about the author rather than the journal. You can mention that, like, for example, did you do that already? Yeah, here you just said a study as well. So what you really want to do, especially when you get into the literature reviews, you want to introduce by the authors. So what you should probably have done, starting with this one, is you should have said something like a collaborative analysis journal written by various writers, blah, blah, blah. And then you could have ended this sentence and said something like, this this collaborative headed by Verma blah blah blah, whatever his or her name is, and offer the full name and a qualifier. And that's what you want to do every time you introduce a source in when the source is providing important information related to your actual topic and argument. So again, here you should probably say, according to, is this their name? Ferrier, I don't even, I'm not even going to try to pronounce it. Caceres, according to that person. And then state something about who they are. What is this person's profession? Or maybe say that they write for the National Library of Medicine or whatever, right? So introduce it by the author rather than saying something like this by the publisher. But you can include the publisher as like where that person writes for, right? Then if you include her name in this signal phrase, all you would need in here would just be the page number or paragraph number. Okay. So just remember that for all of your citations here. Always try to go by the author's name when you have an author. Okay, good discussion of the author's side or opposing side. Now, try not to end an entire paragraph like this. You don't want to end a whole paragraph like this with a citation, because what does that look like? Well, to your teacher, to me, it looks like it's possible that this entire paragraph came from that author, that source, and obviously that wouldn't be good. You got to have your voice in there a lot more than the source material. So obviously that's not the case here. I'm sure that this is not all from that source. So what you would want to do is you want to, again, cite that source properly with a proper signal phrase that introduces who Wells is and why anybody should care about that person, what they have to say, and then give the quote or whatever it is. Also, you probably ought to have more quotes than you do. You do have some here, like here's one, but you want to let your authors speak in the literature review, because this is where that's actually what's going on. You're letting your authors speak about what is known about the topic and what they have to say about it. So it's good to actually let them speak by quoting them directly. Also, you don't ever want to, if you remember reading about the hamburger method in a week or two ago, you'll remember, if you remember reading about the hamburger method is all about making sure your voice comes before and after every time you cite something. So your voice should come here again after this citation, after this source information, to help your audience understand the point that it makes and what you want them to get from that point and how it relates to what you said leading up to that point, right? Now you talk about your gap here, so that's awesome. I definitely was looking for that, so that's great. Now, method section. Okay, that all looks very good. Primary researches was a survey. So that's from your survey that you did, and then you say problem or weakness, and you highlight it with bold. That's awesome. Very good. Good job with your method section. Results. So you outline kind of what you got from the survey. You visually represent it with your figure here, so that's good. What you really should do there with the figure is you should have the title here is good enough. So what you could do is you could just take this and copy and paste it and maybe put it in smaller print and unbold it and put it underneath here as your citation for the graphic. Because under the graphic is where I would expect to see the figure number and then a description of what the survey is, what it's about, and then the full citation. So if this came from a source, you need to cite it, the source, with the full citation below here along with that. Now, if you created this yourself, I suppose it's possible you might have created this yourself. And if you did that, which I'm guessing maybe you did since it comes from the survey, then what you would do is you would do everything I just said, but when you get down here when you get to the source, you would put data source, but instead of saying so it'd be data source : but instead of having a full citation like from a source, you would just put something like created by author, meaning yourself, if you created. Okay, and then you want to talk a little bit, maybe talk a little bit more about what you want your audience to get from this, because it seems pretty brief what you have here. Then you talk about the misinformation, the implications, and what it has what it affects on things. So that's good. And then here's your more detailed discussion of what it all means, what you want your audience to get out of seeing all that, or that sort or source material in your findings. Something else it would be good for you to do either here or in the conclusion is to reiterate the gap or the weaknesses that you came across. And you could either answer the gap, for example, talk about why the gap, how you think the gap could be filled or fixed, or you could just simply talk about how the gap and weaknesses, how did they affect your overall ability to conduct your research, right? And how did it play out? But it's really good if you can provide an answer to the gap, because then that shows your ingenuity and your good thinking, critical thinking. All right, conclusion looks good. Great job. All right, we're excited. You got some excess spacing here, so you want to close that up. Make sure it's all double spaced. All double spaced. Same here. Get rid of that excess spacing. If you're not sure how to do that, you can let me know, or you can look it up. You can Google how to. You can either Google how to fix that, or you can look at. You can ask me, and I can help you out with it. D, F, G, H. Okay, so everything's in alphabetical order, and all your entries look good except that's excess spacing. And also, you don't want to have this kind of spacing here. You want to try to keep it all closest to the right margin as possible until you get to the last line, where you usually can't help it being short. So you'll want to take some of this and move it up to here. And the easiest way to do that is usually just to go somewhere here where you look at how much space you need here. Think about, okay, how much of this would fill that space? Maybe a bit here. And then you put your cursor right there, like after journal. Oh, okay. Well, that went to somewhere I didn't need to go there. Let me get back in your paper. I think I lost your paper when I did that. Okay. Yeah. So, what you want to do is you want to put your cursor here, like say maybe right here after the word journals, and then put your cursor in there and hit the space bar. And if it works right, then this part will pop back up here. And this part here will move to the left, and everything will move the way it's supposed to. You may have to do that more than once to get all of it to line up to the right, but that's how you do it. If that doesn't work for some reason, like if you go all the way over here and it's still not popping up there, then that may mean that you need to rewrite the whole entry and then redo it, because maybe you might have done some stuff with this entry after you placed it here. And sometimes when you do things with the entry after you placed it, it makes it hard to go back in and fix things like this, right? So, but just try to do the best you can. Is that a major factor? Is that going to hurt your grade if you don't do that? No, of course not. I'm just trying to show you, like I've mentioned before, trying to show you how to make everything really good, right? How to do everything the right way. Okay, so you get that one, you got this one. So just check. You got a little bit here. Just check and see if you can fix all those. And if you can't, don't worry about it. But if you can, that would be much better. All right. As always, or as I already mentioned, you got to make sure that you highlight everything that you fix all the way through the paper, and annotate everything so that I can tell what you fixed, and then resubmit it to me so that I can give you more feedback, and that way we can get your report looking spot perfect for your final portfolio. All right, that'll do it for this video.